Welcome to Education Forward, our program where we discuss important issues in learning today. Today, we are exploring a question that many people are thinking about. Should traditional letter grading systems in schools be eliminated? This topic is very relevant because it touches the lives of students, their families, and educators everywhere. It makes us think about how we measure learning and what success in school really means. To help us understand the different sides of this discussion, we have two excellent guests. First, I'd like to introduce Ms. Sarah Chen. Ms. Chen is an educational innovator and a strong supporter of moving away from traditional letter grades. She has worked with many schools to develop new ways of assessing student progress. Welcome, Ms. Chen. And joining us is Mr. David Miller. Mr. Miller is an experienced school principal who believes that letter grades continue to be a valuable tool in education. He has seen firsthand how grading systems work in schools for many years. Welcome, Mr. Miller. We are looking forward to hearing their different perspectives today. Our goal is to have a thoughtful conversation about the best ways to support our students.
Thank you, Alex, for the introduction and for having me on the program. I believe it is time for us to seriously reconsider the use of traditional letter grades in our schools. My main concern is that these grades, like A, B, or C, often do more harm than good to a student's learning journey. Firstly, let's think about the stress they create. Many students become so focused on getting a high grade that they forget about the joy of learning. They might choose easier subjects or avoid asking questions if they think it will risk their grade. This fear limits their curiosity. Secondly, a single letter grade is a very simple way to describe something complex, like learning. It cannot truly show what a student understands or what skills they have developed. For example, a student might be excellent at creative thinking in a subject, but struggle with tests, and the grade won't show that strength. Learning is a personal journey, with ups and downs, and a letter grade doesn't capture this individual progress. Furthermore, grades can turn learning into a competition. Students may start to compare themselves with others constantly, rather than focusing on their own improvement. This competitive environment is not always healthy. We want students to collaborate and support each other, not just try to be better than their classmates in terms of scores. We need an assessment system that truly nurtures a love for learning. A system that encourages students to explore, to make mistakes, and to learn from them without constant fear of a bad mark. Instead of just a label, students need detailed feedback that helps them understand their strengths and shows them clear steps for improvement. Our goal should be to develop lifelong learners who are motivated from within, not just by external rewards like grades. Focusing on the whole student and their individual growth is much more valuable than reducing their efforts to a simple letter.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here to discuss this important topic. While I understand Ms. Chen's points, I believe that traditional letter grades still have a very significant and positive role in our education system. Firstly, grades provide a clear, simple, and widely understood way to communicate a student's academic performance. Parents can quickly understand how their child is doing, and students themselves can see where they stand. This clarity is vital for identifying areas where a student might need more help or, conversely, where they are excelling and might need more challenges. Secondly, grades can be a strong motivator for many students. Having a target, like achieving a certain grade, encourages them to put in effort, manage their time, and study diligently. This process helps them develop important life skills, such as discipline, responsibility, and perseverance. These are qualities that will serve them well beyond their school years, in higher education, and in their careers. Furthermore, we cannot ignore the practical reality that grades are used by institutions outside of the school. Universities rely on grades for admissions, and employers sometimes look at academic records. Eliminating a common standard like letter grades could make it more difficult for students to transition to these next stages of their lives. It could create a very uneven playing field if different schools adopt widely different, non-standardized assessment methods. Also, removing grades might lead to a lack of accountability. Without a clear measure, How do we ensure that educational standards are being met across the board? How do we fairly compare student achievement or school effectiveness if we don't have a common language of assessment? While the system may not be perfect, letter grades offer a level of objectivity and consistency that is hard to achieve with purely descriptive feedback, especially in large school systems. We must be careful not to discard a system that, for all its criticisms, provides structure and recognized benchmarks.
Thank you both for your opening statements. Ms. Chen, you spoke compellingly about the stress caused by grades. Could you elaborate a bit more on how this stress specifically impacts a student's ability or willingness to learn deeply, beyond just test preparation?
Certainly, Alex. When students are under constant pressure to achieve high grades, their learning often becomes superficial. They might resort to memorizing facts just to pass an exam, rather than trying to understand the concepts deeply or see how they connect to the real world. This is often called surface learning. More importantly, the fear of getting a low grade can make students very risk-averse. They might avoid challenging projects or hesitate to ask questions in class if they think it will make them look like they don't understand. True learning involves exploration, making mistakes, and learning from those mistakes. If every mistake is penalized with a lower grade, students won't feel safe to take those intellectual risks.
Mr. Miller, Ms. Chen paints a picture of students being afraid to take risks. How do you respond to this idea that grades can stifle genuine curiosity and deep learning by focusing too much on performance?
I acknowledge that for some students there can be anxiety associated with grades. However, I believe it's also a matter of perspective and how the school environment manages this. A certain amount of pressure is not always a bad thing. It can teach students how to perform under expectations, which is a reality of life. The world outside school has deadlines, performance reviews, and evaluations. Learning to manage these pressures in a supportive school environment can build resilience. It's not about creating fear, but about setting clear expectations and helping students develop strategies to meet them. Good teachers can balance this. Also, for many students, the desire to achieve a good grade is a powerful motivator to engage more deeply, not less.
Ms. Chen, if we were to move away from letter grades, what specific, practical alternatives would you propose? How would schools communicate progress to students and parents effectively?
There are several effective alternatives that focus on growth and understanding. One key method is detailed, constructive feedback. Instead of just a B, a student would receive comments on what they did well, where they struggled, and specific steps they can take to improve. Student portfolios are another excellent tool. These are collections of a student's work over time: projects, essays, presentations. Portfolios allow students, teachers, and parents to see tangible evidence of learning and progress, not just a snapshot from a test. Regular student-teacher conferences, perhaps also involving parents, can provide a much richer, more nuanced conversation about a student's development, their strengths, and areas for growth. We could also use competency-based assessments, where students demonstrate mastery of specific skills rather than just accumulating points.
Mr. Miller, those alternatives, detailed feedback, portfolios, regular conferences, sound very student-centered. What are your concerns about their practicality, especially in larger schools or districts with limited resources?
While these approaches are appealing in theory, their implementation on a large scale presents significant challenges. Providing detailed, individualized feedback for every student in every subject is incredibly time-consuming for teachers. Many teachers already have large class sizes and heavy workloads. Managing and assessing comprehensive portfolios for hundreds of students would require substantial additional time and potentially specialized training for staff. There's also the issue of subjectivity and consistency. How do we ensure that the feedback or portfolio assessment is fair and comparable from one teacher to another or from one school to another? Letter grades, for all their faults, offer a standardized metric that is relatively easy to understand and apply consistently. This helps ensure a degree of fairness. Without this common benchmark, it could become very difficult to compare student abilities for things like college applications or even moving between schools.
Ms. Chen, how would a system without grades address the need for external institutions, like universities, that currently rely on GPA and transcripts for admissions decisions?
This is an important question. Some universities are already moving towards more holistic reviews of applications, looking beyond just grades. They consider essays, recommendations, extracurricular activities, and, yes, detailed narratives or portfolios if schools provide them. If schools collectively started providing richer forms of assessment data, universities would adapt. It requires a shift in mindset from both K-12 and higher education. We could develop standardized ways to present portfolio highlights or competency achievements that are meaningful to universities. It's not an impossible problem to solve.
Mr. Miller, a common argument for grades is that they help identify students who are struggling and need support, or those who are excelling and need more challenges. How would this be managed effectively without grades?
That's a key function of grades. A consistent pattern of low grades is a clear signal that a student needs intervention. A pattern of high grades indicates a need for enrichment. While detailed feedback can also identify these needs, it might be less immediate or harder to spot trends across different subjects or teachers without a summarizing grade. It could become more challenging to allocate resources for support programs or advanced learning opportunities if the identification process is less clear-cut and more reliant on individual teacher interpretations. Grades provide a quick, system-level overview of student performance that is useful for school-wide planning and resource allocation.
If I may, Alex, I believe a system focused on continuous feedback and observation can be even more effective at identifying student needs, and much earlier. Teachers who are closely observing student work and providing regular, detailed feedback are often more attuned to subtle difficulties or emerging talents than if they just rely on test scores. The focus shifts from what grade did they get to what does this student understand and what do they need next to grow. That's a more proactive approach. Thank you. As we conclude, I want to re-emphasize that our primary goal as educators should be to foster a genuine love of learning in every student. Traditional letter grades, unfortunately, often shift the focus from this intrinsic joy of discovery to the extrinsic reward of a high score. This system can inadvertently teach students that the outcome, the grade, is more important than the process of learning, exploring, and understanding. It can create an environment where students are compared against each other in ways that don't always reflect their unique strengths or their individual progress over time. Imagine classrooms where students feel empowered to ask difficult questions, to tackle challenging tasks, and to learn from their mistakes without the constant shadow of how it will impact their GPA. This is the kind of learning environment that nurtures creativity, critical thinking, and resilience. By moving beyond a simple letter or number, we can embrace assessment methods that truly value individual effort, growth, and deep understanding. Methods like descriptive feedback, portfolios, and student-led conferences give a much richer and more accurate picture of what a student knows and can do. These approaches help students to understand their own learning process, to identify their strengths, and to see clear pathways for improvement. This leads to greater student engagement, reduced anxiety about failure, and a more positive and productive school experience for everyone. It is not about lowering standards. It is about redefining success in a more meaningful and supportive way. It is about preparing students for a complex future where adaptability and a love for learning are paramount. It's time for our assessment practices to catch up with our understanding of how students learn best. Let's choose a path that supports every student's journey to reach their full potential.
Thank you, Alex. In my view, while we should always seek to improve education, traditional letter grades remain a vital and effective tool. They provide a necessary structure, a clear standard, and a means of accountability for students, teachers, and schools. These grades are a common language understood by everyone involved in a student's education and future: parents, universities, and employers. This shared understanding is incredibly important for consistency and fairness across different educational settings. Grades offer students a clear benchmark. They know what is expected of them and can see how their efforts translate into results. This structure is crucial for many students to stay motivated, organized, and focused on their academic responsibilities. If we eliminate grades, we face significant risks. There is a real possibility of declining academic rigor if clear performance measures are absent. It could become much more difficult to objectively identify students who are falling behind and need targeted support, or those who are excelling and require more advanced challenges. This could inadvertently widen achievement gaps, rather than narrow them if we cannot easily track and respond to student needs systematically. While no system is without flaws, letter grades provide a fair, generally consistent, and widely accepted method of evaluating academic performance. They prepare students for the realities of higher education and the professional world, where performance is regularly assessed and quantified. Instead of completely abandoning a system that has served education for many years, perhaps our focus should be on how to use grades more effectively alongside other forms of feedback to support student learning without losing the benefits of clarity and accountability. They remain one of the most reliable ways to ensure a level playing field and prepare students adequately for their future endeavors.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chen and Mr. Miller, for a very insightful and thorough discussion on the role of letter grades in schools. We have heard compelling arguments from both sides of this complex issue today. Ms. Chen has passionately argued that eliminating traditional grades could reduce student stress, foster deeper engagement, and encourage a genuine love for learning through more holistic and descriptive assessment methods. She highlighted the potential for alternatives like portfolios and detailed feedback to better capture individual student growth. On the other hand, Mr. Miller has emphasized the importance of letter grades for providing clarity, motivation, and a universally understood standard for students, parents, and external institutions. He raised concerns about the practicality of alternatives in large-scale settings and the potential risks to accountability and fairness if grades were removed. It's clear that there is no simple answer, and the best path forward likely involves careful consideration of many different factors and perspectives. The central question remains: how can we best measure and support student learning in a way that is both meaningful and practical? We hope that today's conversation has provided our viewers with valuable insights and much food for thought on this important educational debate. Thank you once again to our guests, and thank you to our audience for joining us on